Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to get into something we all need, but let's be honest, can really struggle with as adults, and that's building and keeping truly great friendships. We're going to look at the science and the art behind it.
Does this feel a little too real? I mean, think about it. As a kid, making a friend was as easy as saying, "Hey, I like your lunchbox." But as adults, suddenly it feels like we're trying to build IKEA furniture with half the instructions missing.
So that really gets to the heart of it, right? Why does something that is so fundamental to being human feel so complicated all of a sudden? We're going to unpack what's called the adult friendship gap, and more importantly, talk about how we can start to close it. To really get why this matters so much, we have to look at one of the longest studies ever done on adult life. I'm talking 80 years. For 8 decades, researchers followed the lives of hundreds of people.
And what they found was just stunning. It turns out the biggest predictor of a long, healthy life wasn't your cholesterol or how much you exercised. Nope, it was the quality of your relationships. Good friendships literally keep us happier and healthier. It's not a nice to have,
So this
it's
brings us to
essential.
a really strange paradox. We know, scientifically, that these connections are vital for us to thrive. And yet, a recent survey found that more than a third of Americans reported feeling seriously lonely. So what's going on? Well, researchers have a really helpful way of looking at this. Loneliness isn't just about being by yourself. It's this gap, the gap between the amount of connection you want in your life and the amount you actually have. And when you think about it as a gap, suddenly it feels less like a permanent state of being and more like a problem we can actually work on and solve.
Okay, so how do we solve it? Well, friendship expert Shasta Nelson has this amazing framework that makes it so much clearer. It turns out that pretty much every solid friendship you can think of is built on 3 key pillars.
Friend intimacy triangle, she calls, which is just a model for how we build closeness in our friendships. And those 3 pillars are positivity, consistency, and vulnerability. And here's the thing. If a friendship ever feels like it's a little bit off or it's stuck, it is almost always because one of these 3 pillars is feeling a little wobbly. So let's break them down.
Positivity. This is all about making sure the good interactions outweigh the bad ones. You know, you're laughing, you feel seen, you feel good after you hang out. And a huge part of creating that positive vibe comes down to how we listen. Are we just waiting for a pause so we can jump in and tell our story? Or are we actually trying to understand where they're coming from? That little mental shift from listening to respond to listening to understand, it is an absolute game changer.
Pillar number 2 is consistency. And researcher Jeffrey Hall actually put numbers to this. It's fascinating. Friendships are built on time. It takes about 50 hours of interaction to move from acquaintance to casual friend, around 90 hours to become a real friend, and over 200 hours to become a close best friend. So you're not bad at making friends, you might just be 50 hours short. And the third pillar, vulnerability. This one gets misunderstood all the time. It is not about trauma dumping on someone you just met. It's this slow, gradual process of letting someone see the real you, the person behind the perfect Instagram feed. It's sharing your hopes, your fears, your mistakes, little by little, and building that trust layer by layer. All right, so now we know the what: positivity, consistency, and vulnerability. Let's get into the how. This next part is all about practical, actionable tools you can start using, like today, to build up those 3 pillars. Now get ready for this because it's so interesting and totally counterintuitive. It comes from psychologist Shelley Gable. We tend to think that being a good friend means showing up when things go wrong. And of course, that's incredibly important. But her research shows that how you celebrate their good news is actually a stronger predictor of the friendship's long-term success. So there's really only one type of response that builds the bond. It's called active constructive. It's when you match their energy, you're genuinely excited for them, and you ask questions. That's incredible. Tell me everything. The other ways, being passive, like, oh, cool, or even destructive, like, wow, that sounds stressful, they slowly chip away the connection. So be the person who leans in when they share a win.
Oh man, we have all been there, right? Trapped in that conversation loop. How are you? Good, you? Good. Weather's crazy. These default questions are conversation killers. They don't invite any real connection because, well, they don't invite any real answers.
So let's just upgrade our questions. Ask things that invite a story. You know, researchers at Harvard found that talking about ourselves activates the same pleasure centers in our brains as food or money. So when you ask a better question, you're literally giving someone a little hit of dopamine, and you get to know them so much better in the process.
You know, lasting friendships don't just run on big, exciting moments. They thrive on what some people call unsexy maintenance. These are the small, deliberate habits. Keeping a little note on your phone to remember their kid's name, turning that vague, "we should do this again soon," into an actual plan on the calendar. These little rituals, they're the glue.
But of course, no relationship is a perfect highlight reel. Things get awkward, feelings can get hurt, and the real strength of a friendship isn't avoiding problems, it's about how you figure them out together.
I think we have this deep-seated fear that if we're honest about something that's bothering us, we'll risk the friendship. But actually, the exact opposite is true. Gentle, direct honesty is what protects the friendship. Because all those tiny little resentments that we swallow, they don't just go away. They build up and become much bigger issues down the road.
And a big part of that honesty is learning to set boundaries. This isn't about building walls or pushing people away. It's actually about creating a sustainable, respectful relationship. And it's a simple process. First, you have to figure out what you actually need. Then, you communicate that clearly, using I statements. And finally, you have to stick to it. Consistency is what makes a boundary feel real.
And the way we frame these conversations makes all the difference in the world. Look at this. A blame statement, "you always," it just attacks their character. It puts them on the defensive immediately. But a responsibility statement, "I felt," it owns your feeling without making them a bad person. It opens the door for a real conversation instead of slamming it shut with an accusation.
So, as we start to wrap this up, I want to leave you with one final thought, and it's a really empowering one. Friendship isn't this magical thing you either have or you don't. It's a practice. It's a skill you can actually learn and get better at.
Remember, friendship is not about luck. It's about effort. But, and this is the important part, it's not about huge, exhausting gestures. It's about the accumulation of small, consistent investments. It's the check-in text. It's the follow-up question. It's putting that next coffee date on the calendar. Those are the tiny little bricks that build a friendship that can last a lifetime.
So I'll leave you with this question to think about. What is one small, deliberate action you can take in a friendship this week? Maybe it's sending one of those better questions to a friend, or celebrating a small win with real enthusiasm. Whatever it is, you have the power to build better connections. Thanks so much for joining me.